Welcome to Rules of Villainy, where three new trading card game players venture to become competitive players and discuss their opinions on Disney's Lorcana. I'm Villain Vince, joined by my two co-hosts, Villain Andy and Villain Brad, aka the Mayor. What's up, guys? How's it going tonight?
I'm tired, Vince. Tired. How
Yeah.
about you, Andy?
I'm doing all right. I feel like every day I'm tired, but
I think it's just getting old, but yeah, I feel tired too. But
I do have something I wanna throw in real quick before you get into the news, Vince. It's kind of been
let's do it.
It's been really bothering me for like the last week, almost to the minute. It became very evident to me in our last podcast that I don't know how to read cards, at least not well. And it dawned on me that maybe I should give it a second attempt and make it up to you guys, make it up to the listeners. So I randomly pulled a card from a box, randomly, I promise. Maybe. But I got this Cobra Bubbles card that I want to try to read to you guys and see if I do a better job. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's see it. Or hear it, I should say.
Yeah, let's hear. I mean, I guess we are on YouTube now, so maybe somebody will see this beautiful card from set 2. It is a amber card. It is rare and 7-cost inkable. He is Storyborn and an ally, and he's Cobra Bubbles, just a social worker. And the only thing that he has on the card other than that is that it's a flavor text that says, "Let me get this straight. Your magic spellbook got washed away with some flood of magic ink." How was that?
that's not bad.
Did I do it justice?
It's not bad. Not bad. I mean, the Olympics are starting this week, so I give it a 8.5.
Okay, I'll take it because I feel like last week with Mufasa was a hard 5 if you're being generous.
Yeah, I think 8.5 is good. I'll give it an 8.4 just to be slightly more villainous than Vince.
That sounds about right coming from you.
That does absolutely sound about right. I will just say I did not realize a flavor text on that was insulting spellbook, which controversial opinion. I love that card. I know people hate that card. Now if you're watching, you'll see that my cat is now in frame of view, but you'll just have to enjoy that. So we're going to move right into our Underworld news segment. So I think this happened just right after we recorded last week, but it was announced that Disney Lorcana is coming in 2025 to mainland China and Japan. So it'll be released in those local languages there. And I think that's exciting. And it brings it up to 24 total markets globally once it's released in those two. And I mean, China and Japan are some of, I think, the largest markets for TCG. Not just larger markets in general, but especially for TCG players. I mean, a lot of card games get their initial releases actually in Japan and China. And so it's really exciting to see them joining the Disney Lorcana community. What do you guys think?
I can't wait, honestly. I wish I had friends in Japan. I'll probably have to pay an arm and a leg to get some, but I would love some Japanese or even Chinese, foil cards, or maybe even an enchanted. I think other languages are pretty cool. I actually played. I realized you could turn the tabletop simulator. You could turn that into a different language and get that.
Oh, can you really?
French. Yeah. So I've been playing with the French cards now. Keep my opponents sharp. They got to know what their cards do. But so do I, right? So apparently that's
I guess that really teaches you to use those triggers, right? Like, I know what that card does.
You gotta remember your cards. You're not always gonna know what they do. I guess you're always supposed to be able to read them, but
So my question to both of you, though, when this releases, does this mean that we may end up going to Japan or China for a Lorcana challenge? Maybe not a DLC, but like a world some point?
yeah.
We as in us three?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of this podcast and YouTube channel, Brad, is to be the very best. Okay.
Yeah.
Japan for sure.
That would be cool. One of our local people that we play with occasionally is got a Japan vacation planned for next year, so I might hit him up on the side to bring back a few packs for me because that it seems really cool, and I'm just happy that those markets are getting them as much as we love the game to do a podcast for it. Right, that's how much we love the game to see two brand new and huge markets come into it. That's a lot of people that are going to get to enjoy it as well.
Yeah. I am stoked. And so I'm also really, really stoked for next week because next week is Gen Con. So for those that don't know, the whole history of Lorcana, Lorcana was first released at Gen Con last year in 2023. And it was a madhouse. It was the first time I went to Gen Con. And I mean, they had to call the fire marshal because there's so many people
Wow.
in line. And I was pumped for Lorcon. I saw that, and it's like, that's a game I'm going to get myself into. But I'm excited. A little less, I wouldn't say less excited, but there's less kind of big news because they're not releasing Shimmering Skies there. But they are having a whole series of events. So they're doing draft. Well, they're doing a weird, which I'm really, really excited and interested in. They're doing a kind of hybrid draft sealed event. So I don't want to speculate particularly how that's going to be done at this point in time. So I'm excited. But as a result, because this runs from Wednesday till Sunday, I won't be here next week. And we've got a special guest host coming to you next week, and we'll leave that as a surprise. But you should absolutely 100% tune in because you're going to love this guest host. They are one of the best players in our area, and their insights to this game are just phenomenal. And I think you're definitely going to want to tune into that. But I'm excited to go to Gen Con. I've got booked myself up for 4 events. I'm doing a Chapter 1, Chapter 2, draft sealed hybrid. I'm doing a multiplayer event with a friend of mine, and I'm doing a like a whole competitive, kind of like the DLCs or the set championship, and I'm doing a set 3, set 4 hybrid kind of event. So I'm doing 4 events at Gen Con, and I'm hoping to get that mat that's exclusive, and I'll get some promo cards and hopefully a pin and a whole bunch of things.
Is that the one with the like sections,
the squares of people? Yeah,
it is
them, like the original one from Gen Con.
It is very much, which I wish I had gotten last time. But just a little aside, last year, I'm pretty sure I've heard this story enough times that I think it's true, but I'll just put an asterisk. Maybe it's not, but I think it is true. Is that somebody booked all of the events for Disney Lorcana, bought them all, and so you couldn't get them on the Gen Con website to order and stuff. So I just assumed they were all sold out, and little did I know that they canceled them. So then you could walk up, and they were just taking walk-ups to, and you could you could do starter decks, or you could do a draft, or they were doing a whole bunch of events.
Wow.
And I found this out after Gen Con, and I was just so disappointed that I did not know that this was a thing. But I've seen some creators that were there last year that are pretty well known now. They were just kind of getting started, and they got those mats, and they're really cool. And I'm very jealous because, as both of you know, I am addicted to the mats. I love to collect them. I do not have the set championship mat from either set championship. So, well, we'll see. We're hoping. This has been a rough set championship for me. But anyway, enough about Gen Con. Let's talk about this card that's been revealed in the past 7 days. Unfortunately, I don't remember who revealed this particular card. Make sure we'll do better doing that next time. But I'll kick it over to you, Brad.
Oh, Did I pass the test? I get to do it again?
Well, we're about to find out.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Okay, this is an Amethyst card for Magicka Dispel Cruel Sorceress. She's a 4-cost inkable card with 2 attack and 5 willpower. And her ability is playing with power. During opponent's turns, if an effect would cause you to discard 1 or more cards from your hand, you don't discard. She quests for 1, and she's a rare card.
Nice.
And she's spicy.
Anti-Bucky, for sure.
Yeah, it's weird timing. A lot of people were calling out. They're like, it's weird that this card's coming out after Bucky gets completely nuked. But as we all know, these cards were planned way in advance, right? So Bucky had such a prevalent presence in the meta that they had to do something about it, but even before this card came out. But she still comes out on 4 if you don't cheat her out. So Bucky's already done a lot of damage by then. So, yeah, one of the big things that people thought about immediately was that she's a whole new world proof. Instead of discarding your hand with her on board, if you get wheeled, you can just draw 7 cards. You don't have to discard your entire hand. So it's pretty interesting. With her 5 bodies, she's not too tough to deal with. I feel like a couple bodies or even some attack spells or songs, however you want to do it, can get her down pretty quickly. But she can really put some spice on the matchup.
She is brawlable. So she won't be great
That's what
in Ruby Amethyst, like in a mirror or something like that, if Brawl stays relevant, which I think it will have to, unless they replace it with a more efficient removal spell. I really like what you said about a whole new world, being able to keep your hand. I just don't know that it will see as much tech now that they've nerfed Bucky, but I think it does really speak to sort of the large scale of things when it comes to these cards. They not only nerfed 1, but 2, but 3 aspects of Bucky. And now we see cards like this, which you might think that our immediate reactions were, well, why do they need to nerf Bucky so hard if they had cards like this coming out? It just means that there may also be more cards that would have made Bucky even more broken. And that something like this wasn't, something like this that they had planned. This maybe they knew Bucky was going to be good. They have this plan for the next set to relieve and help balance things out, but it was just Bucky was too much of a squirrel, so they had to really nerf it. So it kind of gets me really interested for what there is to come in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing with Bucky, right, is it originally came out on 2. This still comes out on 4, unless you can kind of cheat it out earlier. I am also like, a question I think I'll have for both of you is like whether or not you think this is playable or not. Does it find a spot? And I think the thing for me is right, yeah, it's a 4 inkable, which certainly makes it, I think, more likely to see some play, but also like I struggle to see what 4-drop you would cut. Like I think about Ruby Amethyst today, and you've got quite a bit of 4 competitive slots. Like, is there a place that I want to cut out of and maybe insert 1 or 2 of these? Especially as we've said, it's brawlable, it's Medusable. It is a card that can quickly be removed from. I think I would have a different opinion on this card if it had Ward. If it had Ward, that it could keep it on the board. But then I think in some ways you may run into the opposite of Bucky, which is like now you want to do these discard tricks and now you can't do that. Although I tend to find that like having more cards as a player is like a blessing and a curse, right? Because you could risk decking yourself in some respects. And it's just more fun to have more options. So I don't think if this had Ward, it would be as broken as, say, Bucky is to have Ward, because it forces your opponent to get rid of cards. But yeah, I'm not sure right now that it has a place in any competitive deck. I think it'll be a good fun deck. I think draftable for sure. Well, actually, even draftable, maybe not.
Draftable.
I don't know.
Depends on
I don't know what has.
Yeah, depends on how much discard there is.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's what I was
Although if
going
you're
to add.
doing like a whole like chapters 1 through 4,
Mm,
maybe this would be a
Sure.
bad card to get.
definitely.
But yeah, I think it's fair to say that it depends on how much discard.
Yeah, I was going to add that. Yeah, as you guys both pointed out, she's immediately susceptible to the options in Ruby with Brawl and Medusa, but it really nerfs a discard heavy deck, like which is kind of prevalent even with Bucky going away. I think that the Lemon Lime deck that we saw, and we'll probably talk about a little bit later, is making a rise. I was playing around with it, the last couple weeks just on the side to see if I can make anything work, and it's a lot of fun to play. But this card is a hard counter to it because you're wanting to get Prince John out on 3 to take advantage of those discards. And as soon as you get your Prince John out, if you see her on the other side of the board on the next turn, you're not getting that card draw that you're expecting to get from him. So I like it in some matchups. I think that she can be really effective, but the matchup into anything Ruby is just going to take her off the board immediately if there's not a better threat out there.
Yeah, and I think one sort of way to evaluate a card's value is how good is it in a number of scenarios, right? And unless discard is as prevalent as Bucky makes it right now, I do think you're right, Brad. I think Lemon Lime discard has perhaps some place in the meta. Maybe not tier 0 or tier 1 or something. Maybe one of those offshoot decks, like kind of a Jafar Wheel or something like that, that can win a couple games. But I I think um, I think this card is not good enough in too many other scenarios that you're going to be stuck in, and so you can't reliably have it in your deck even as like a 1 or 2 of, because the fewer of them in your deck, then the less likely you're going to get it in the situations that you actually need it. And
Yeah.
you kind of fall into that pitfall, really. So it is a spicy card. It tells a lot about Bucky and sort of the overall arching game plan they have for this card game, this TCG. But uh, I think I don't know that it'll get much play at all, really. Unfortunately,
Yeah, we'll have to see.
like most of the Magic is.
I know, it's so sad. All right, well, let's get into our main segment. And then this week, we're going to talk about the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Fort Worth and the final weekend of the Ursula's Return Set Championship. So, first off, here, we've got a huge breakdown of the 64, top 64 decks. So I'll just kind of quickly run through them here. So an Emerald Steel, no surprise here, had the most decks, 30 in the top 64. Sapphire Steel had 10. Amethyst Ruby had 8, which, I'm a little surprised actually about that being somewhat low. And then you have Amber Steel, which had 7. So again, I think, we last week were talking about the return of Steel Song, and we're seeing that here at Dallas Fort Worth. You have 5 decks in Ruby Sapphire, 2 decks in Amber Emerald, 1 deck in Amber Amethyst, and 1 deck in Emerald Amethyst. And of those, I think what's interesting is when we look at the top 4 here, there was 1 deck that was an Emerald Steel, 1 deck that was an Amethyst Ruby. So 1 out of the 8 made it all the way to actually won the event. And then 2 Amber Steel. And what I think is fascinating about this is there were 7 decks in the top 64. Cut that more than half, got down to 2 decks in the top 32, and all 2 of those decks made it to top 4, and 1 made it to the finals. Unfortunately, lost to the Ruby Amethyst player. And then, what do you guys think?
I think it's really interesting. I know we were talking before we started here about how I was really wanted and was hoping we could get the total number. We all know from playing in a DLC that they make you choose the colors on the form when you submit your deck list. And I'd really love to see like the conversion rates of total number of decks in the event, because as you said, Ruby Amethyst having only like a 12% representation in the top 64 really makes me wonder, because I while I wasn't at the event, I certainly have been at a lot of these set championships, and Ruby Amethyst is very, very, very prevalent. And so it it would be very shocking for me. It would seem reasonable, but it would be shocking to find out that maybe there's a 60%, or not 60, but maybe like a 40% of the population is Ruby Amethyst, is this large percentage, but only a very small percentage of that actually converted to the top 64, which um, I wish I was smart enough to know exactly what that means for the deck, you know. But it would be really, really interesting to see. And like Vince said, those two Steel songs making it to top four, uh, I think it says a lot about the two pilots of those decks as well. Um, I, I I wouldn't be surprised if we see them in future DLCs doing well. Steel Song, as we said, is a difficult one to pilot, especially through something like a top 64 cut.
Yeah, and my thoughts on it are, I'm going to sound like a broken record because we just talked about it, briefly, or I did. It just seeing Emerald Steel so high above everybody else percentage-wise, 3 times as many as the next one, and almost 4 times as more decks, or 4 times as many as the Ruby Amethyst that made the top 64 is. It's very evident why they did something about Bucky, because that deck just works, and it's seeing 30 of them make almost half of the top 64 was that deck. I would imagine every single one of them is Bucky. It might not be the case. There might be some variation, but at that level, to wade through 2,000 people, knowing how powerful that Bucky combination is, it's absolutely wild. I expected it to be high, but not 3 times as many as the next color. It's
so I obviously, like, I don't want to speak to Mr. Ravensburger, but no, as that I will say that I think the big reason why Bucky in particular was eroded so heavily is just because it's an fun card to play against.
Yeah.
I actually, like, looking at this tells me that the meta is actually fairly healthy. Yes, Emerald Steel is still very predominant here, but you look at the conversion rate from top 64 to top 4, you go from top 64, you have 30 decks. Top 32, less than half of those decks make it. You only have 12. You get top 16, you got 6, so half of them make it. Top 8, 3 of them make it, half again. Top 4, you got 1. Now, I don't particularly have the breakdown. Obviously, I know from doing the bracket earlier today and looking at it, some of these decks played each other, so obviously one was going to win and one was going to lose. So it's hard to know, like, if you had it more fairly balanced across, like, would all of them made it? Probably not, because only one made it to the top 4, but and then sometimes you just get lucky with your matches too, right? Like, so, like, if you're Ruby Amethyst player, you don't want to be playing 9 matches against Emerald Steel. That would be like a nightmare. And the same goes if you're, Emerald Steel, you don't want to be playing 9 matches against Sapphire Steel, because that's your worst matchup, so I think some of this is also just A, playing well, B, having a really good deck and knowing your deck, and C, also having some luck on your side, whether it be the luck of your matches in the Swiss, and like how you're seated, and like die rolls too. It's like, granted, they're not as valuable in the 2-game format, but getting that top seed can matter really significantly going into that top 64, because then you get to, as long as you're the higher seed player throughout the event, you will always be able to get to go first. And that's a huge advantage, especially now that those deck lists are public going into that top cut. You get to see what your opponent is playing and think and strategize a little bit about it. So, yeah, I think it's interesting, but I would have honestly, like, if you had asked me last week what deck I would have predicted was going to win, I would have said Emerald Steel, and we didn't see that.
Well, it would have been a bit, would have been a good bet. I mean, that's for sure. They're the
Yeah.
highest odds. Um, I think, like you said, Green Steel is not a fun deck to play against. I also contest that it is not a fun deck to play yourself. There are a few, you know, special individuals out there who do truly enjoy removing all decisions from the game entirely and converting it to, Ursula's quest, but uh it
Would
it's not fun for anyone.
I would clarify the Bucky Emerald Steel because I played a lot of Emerald Steel before the Bucky meta,
Right,
and I
discard.
do like that.
Right,
Yeah, the
discard. And
discard. Yeah, yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
it is not exclusive to Emerald Steel. If Lemon Lime becomes the new thing, if your thing is discarding the entire hand of your opponent while also emptying your hand because you probably don't have any card draw to go with that, that's not fun for anyone in the game at
Yeah.
all.
I've I fell victim to it in my last set championships this past weekend, where I started off the day 2-0 and felt really good. Like, hey, this might be my chance to at least top cut. And game three is where I fell off to a Ruby Amethyst, which was a good. It went 3 games and it was just a hard game. But then the fourth game that decided whether or not I get in the top cut was against Bucky, and my blue steel has always been teched to deal with Bucky, but it all 3 of the games that we played against each other were not fun at all. I missed on certain things. He had the perfect top decks, and I mean we were top decking most of the time, both of us. And I'm like, this is not fun. Nicest guy in the world. I think he ended up winning the whole thing, but I'm like, he asked me at the end of the game, he's like, "What are you excited for the most about Shimmering Skies?" And I pointed that squirrel on the board and said, "For him to go away." I'm ready to do some new things. This was the first time that it drastically, affected me, because I've never been all in on the Bucky hate train until this weekend when it just absolutely decimated me. So, yeah, I'm happy to see him go. It's just not fun to play against. I never did play the Bucky Emerald Steel myself, and now I never will.
And I,
Well, welcome to the club, Brad.
I also think that, like, if like you said, 46% of that top cut there is Emerald Steel. The next closest at 15% being Sapphire Steel. I think if you slice the squirrel, you barbecue the squirrel like Ravensburger is doing, uh, like they're doing for Toronto, I think you'll find that there will still be Emerald Steel. I think it will move down in the list, and I think you will see a much more even spread. And I think I think Ravensburger knows that. That's why they barbecued the squirrel. And you know I'm really curious to see. I think I said this in last week's episode that this will be, you know, the first time we'll have the same meta but without Bucky. So we'll sort of get that retrospect. It'll be like, this is what it would have been like, guys, if the squirrel hadn't
Mhm.
run rampant on us. We'll get to see the spread there, and my prediction would be that it'll be a lot more, sort of evened out there, and we'll see 15, 12, 10, like an even spread of these, which Vince, you'll have to tell us how it feels overall, because I that would be a nice meta to play in, because Bucky sucks.
Yeah, we'll find out. Should we take a look at some of these decks? So I've got the deck list up here for the first place winner, Ruby Amethyst. Ed, I think it's 2. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce that. But not a stock standard Ruby Amethyst deck here. So we see the introduction of 4 magic brooms, the Illuminary Keeper, the 1-drop, 1 strength, 2 willpower, with 1 lore. And I think probably the spiciest ad here is the 2-drop Sisu. What is that?
Empowered symboling, yeah, the
Empowered
8-drop Sisu,
power
right?
symbol.
8-drop.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
8-drop Sisu.
Two
Thank
of
you.
them, right?
2 of them. So, cutting here from what I would say is the stock standard, we don't have any B Kings. And we don't
one
have
less
any
Medusa.
Tremaines.
Yeah.
And one less Medusa. Yeah, so what do you guys think of this?
I like it. I like when things are different than the norm. Like you can create the standard Ruby Amethyst deck and be successful with it. It just works. It's why it's so prevalent, always at the top of the the meta in every one of these sets that have come out. But I like when things are different. Like that's why I run the Jim Hawkins package in mine. But the brooms give you that extra one drop, and it has the ability to. I think you can banish him when you play a character. I've never played that broom before, but you can banish him and draw a card. I believe.
Yeah, whenever you
Once the
play,
character is played.
you play a
Yeah.
character, banish him.
So it's a little extra draw there, and the Sisu is the spiciest. I've only ever seen that in red blue, and I don't know what value entirely that brings, but it's a little mini B prep with lore on it. So if you can get her on the board, and even if you don't remove anything, she's a threat for the 3 lore alone. So I like it. I'm not surprised that something like this won. Ruby Amethyst is always going to be up there. What
Yeah.
about you, Andy?
I think Ed is probably a very, very skilled player. I'm guessing the Sisu is there primarily for the Bucky matchup. You want to just play nothing for as long as you can. The only thing you can play that is stuff that recycles into your hand and gets you another card, like Maleficent and Rabbit. I don't know how they play the Sisu, the smaller Sisu on 3, while still discarding, so that they're able to shift maybe on 6 instead of 7. But it's another option. Big Sisu, I feel like, doesn't work against a lot of other decks. Blue Steel, Red Blue, Ruby Amethyst. Most of their impactful characters are going to be above that 2 attack range, and so they're not going to be hit by that large Sisu. I did try and run this deck and tinkered with it a little bit on the numbers. I find Tremaine and B King to be too valuable to get rid of, especially in a meta where you're in the mirror going just back and forth playing a character and trying to get something to stick to get those last couple lore, or also against things like Tamatoa or the giant Cinderella that for some reason I saw like 4 too many of in the last set championships that I did. So I'm a little receptive to maybe the one drop brooms. I definitely think they're not as good as Chernobog's followers, and they always feel bad to get. But I think they may return to the deck post Bucky because they are good card draw, and it is good to have something out on turn 1 to try and pressure some of these slower decks. I think overall Ed is probably a very, very good player. And as Vince said earlier, sometimes there's some luck to it. Sometimes, to your matchups and to the hand and the way your deck is shuffled. But overall, I think it is awesome to see Ruby Amethyst do well. And it's nice to see it do well, even with some changes in there.
Yeah.
Spies.
So this one against, which we're going to talk about, the Amber Steel deck here in just a second. But I do think that Sisu has some utility outside of the Bucky deck. I think it has some utility going into that Amber Steel matchup with if they're running the Cinderella, they're running the
You're absolutely right.
Queen, and you've got some targets, and like really came in clutch in that finals match. I will say one thing that I have found in the Ruby Amethyst deck today that only runs 4 of the 1-drops that Chernobog's followers is that when you don't get the 1-drop, I mean, it's not awful when you don't get it, but man, do you wish you had that 1-drop, all the time. And so I really, really, adding those 4 extra 1-drops, I think does probably make the deck considerably better in some ways. to have that 1-drop play? I mean, Andy, you seem like you're disagreeing here.
It's the 4 1-drop life. You just have to if you get the one of your 4 1-drops, it's like hooray. If you don't, it's just like I don't care. I knew that going into this. This is what I'm here for. I'm ready to do something starting turn 2. I don't need a turn 1. Ink and pass.
I think you were onto something though, Andy, when you said it was probably because of Bucky, because both followers and Broom give you the draw. So you could start the game with 3 of those and have your first 2 turns with extra draws.
And against Bucky, you're not starting the game with anything though. That's the point. Like you aren't playing a 1-drop or a 2-drop. The first card you play against Bucky as Ruby Amethyst essentially is the Maleficent Sorceress on 3 because it replaces itself. So you again don't care that you don't have your 1-drop. You don't care about the 2-drops. You only have 8 of those. The deck used to consider something like Cusco in there as well for additional card draw, but it was just too slow. You needed to just not play anything, save your hand, ink pass, and eventually draw, which again brings us back to how unfun this all was.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. If you don't get that 1-drop in the current deck, you're fine. Like that's the whole game plan. I just think like, especially against some aggro decks, it's nice to have those more 1-drops. But again, that's where I think this big Sisu has a good answer to, is when you're going against some of these more aggro-y threats, whether they be the 1-drop Maleficent that quests for, it's 2, right? Or is it 3?
Maleficent and
2.
Lilo, both of them.
Yeah, you get these, and it's like, you gotcha, big Sisu down and stuff. So I think there's some utility there, but I mean, I think if you're a talented Ruby Amethyst player, you've got other options to beat those decks. But I think that it makes the deck a little bit more. It makes the matches a lot closer than I think you would maybe want them to be as a Ruby Amethyst player, right? Like those, that's kind of my thought. But let's go ahead and hop over to the second place. This Steel Amber or Steel Song by Chris Coy. And I'll be honest, like I haven't played Steel Song in so long, so I'm like way out of practice to even like assess how this goes. But I think one thing I'll say about this deck here is I see why the big Sisu was so successful at helping eliminate this board. You've got Robin Hood, the Queen, Ursula, Ariel, Baloo, Lawrence, Rapunzel. The only
right.
There's only three characters.
It does. Yeah, it does. Lawrence
dodge Sisu.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, I was gonna say 3. Robin Hood, the Queen, and Tinkerbell. Which is like that. You look at that and you're like, yeah, I'd want to have Sisu in my deck for a match like this. But at the same time, you look at this deck and you're like, 1-drop Queen, turn 2, shift, sing, a whole new world, get your opponent off balance from their mulligan. Or you've got other options too, on 2 you could play your Ursula, get a 4-cost singer out. You've got options against Tamatoa with World's Greatest Criminal Mind.
Yeah, this list is awesome. I actually
I
really like it. I'm not sure about the lack of Little Cindy for the songs, but they only run 3 Let the Storm Rage On, no Strength of a Raging Fire. So they are kind of pedal to the metal at the beginning here. You want a Robin Hood or Queen, and then you want to shift one of those. I would imagine the ideal line is Queen 1, shift Queen on 2, Baloo on 3. I really like the use of Baloo here as essentially is free lore. It goes down on the board, right? And it's free lore. It's not quite as quick or as instant as something like a goat, but it's very very spicy. And then Lawrence, Rapunzel, everyone's questing for at least two. They're gonna throw the flute down. They're just gonna probably sing. They'll probably storm rage on themselves just to get the lore from the flutes. They're gonna be doing all kinds of crazy stuff to you. And
Right.
but you're absolutely right though. Big Sisu into this matchup is
The match made in
huge
heaven.
value. Yeah, huge
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of a lucky tech in some ways, I think, right? To have that
Absolutely.
card. I mean, so apparently, like, that card did numbers in which I believe, but you look at this and you're like, wow. And we talked about this last week, and I think in some ways, like, I was proven maybe partly right, partly wrong, which is that I said that I don't think Steel Song is going to see a huge return, but the caveat there where I say is right is that this deck is really powerful in the right hands. If you are a talented player, if you know exactly what you're doing, if you have never played Steel Song, I would not recommend you pick up this deck and go to set championships with it, because I think this deck has some real serious thought processes behind its mulligan, behind its ink choices, and its play. Like, yes, I think you have a line of play, right? You're saying here, queen on one,
Shift queen on
shift two, probably actually Ariel on three and not Baloo to find a song. But I guess that's kind of dependent on what match you're going up with. But yeah, I think it's got definitely super spicy, and interesting. So honestly, like, if I were more experienced at Amber Steel, like I haven't played it in so long, I would build this deck and test it out.
There's only one way to get experience, though, is to build this deck and play it.
I do not have time between Wednesday and Saturday morning.
No, I'm not saying to play it and get ready for your set championships this Saturday, but no, I've always I've been interested in Steel Song. I've toyed with it a little bit, but I've never got to the point. I've learned a lot by playing it, just the little that I have. The how the mulligan, how quickly you can affect the Sapphire player's mulligan if you shift queen on two and then just immediately sing Whole New World. Everything that they built for, assuming they found their quill or their one jumps and all that stuff. You're making them throw that all away and hope they don't get it again, right? So you're effectively resetting the game, and you're mulliganing to do that turn two move and take that possibly huge advantage, but also a very huge risk too, because you don't know what you're going to draw with your essentially
Right.
second mulligan, right? So there's all kinds of nuances to it. I said last week that I never even thought about the synergy between Rapunzel and Lawrence. He comes out swinging for 4, but as soon as he takes damage, he's swinging for nothing. Rapunzel comes out the very next turn, heals him up, so suddenly you got that strength back, and then you get the card draw from Rapunzel. And yeah, I mean, this deck just looks like a lot of fun. And like Andy said, I second the fact that I've always loved this Baloo card. It's almost always guaranteed lore unless they can throw it into your Inkwell. But it he comes out and he's a bodyguard and he doesn't hit for anything, but when he gets banished, that's an immediate 2 lore. So if assuming you questing with him a few times too, you're getting a lot of value out of it, even just protecting the other glimmers that you have on board.
Yeah. I will say, much like any deck, and I think Andy has talked about this a lot, though, is right, sequencing matters, like knowing your sequencing as you're going into a deck and understanding what that play line is. And we just recorded a video of a deck tech, not really a deck, but like a, match between myself and Ron, and like watching it back and just kind of seeing it's like, ooh, like there's some choices you should have made differently. And like, I think it's super useful, like thinking about those things, like, what your sequencing is. And that changes between matches. You hear Andy talk about like the Emerald Steel matchup. Your first kind of card you're looking for is that Maleficent, because it replaces itself. Because the objective you're trying to get in that game, right, is their goal is to try to empty your hand. And what you want to do is you want to get 7 ink on the board so you can get to be prepared and reset the match so you could start. But that isn't the same line you're going to take against a different deck. If you're going against, Ruby Sapphire, you're taking a whole different type of line of thinking here. You want to get that Flynn out on 2. You want to get that Sisu out on 3. You want to have Brawl in hand to brawl their Hiram so that they can prevent their card draw. Maybe you don't have all of those things, but those are the things you're thinking about. Like, how can I get Castle out? How can I make these different decisions? And so you have to know your deck that you're playing and what sequences those are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Andy, you have anything to add?
No, I completely agree. I just I I think you might have to watch the video to find out, but we do cover some really spicy lines, like using Maui to take out evasive characters. Works really really well, or maybe not. You'll have to watch the video to find out. Definitely coming soon
I
here.
stand by it. It was the right decision. I would do it again. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that again. I think it's a good example of read the cards. And also, it's like, I think there's a variance here, right? Like they're time limited matches. So don't like waste a bunch of time, but also you don't have to rush. You can take your time to think through your decision. And if there's a card on the board that you don't know, you haven't seen, just ask your opponent, hey, can I see that card? And if they don't, well, one,
they're a jerk.
They're a jerk. But they mostly will, and just read it just so you understand that card. And feel free to ask questions. Is that card evasive? Because here's the thing, it's like once that card's on the board, you cannot take it back in a competitive event. It is on the board. And I knew in that match Ron would have let me take it back, but I think it was a good learning opportunity for folks to see that actually there is a penalty to that. And in some ways I'll say if you're doing practice matches, you should absolutely 100% penalize yourself for making a wrong decision. Not because you should be hard on yourself about it. Everybody makes bad decisions in games. Even the best players don't play optimally, and that's okay. But you are way more likely to learn from that if in those practice matches you can't take it back. Because A, you'll be like, hey, I know not to do that again. And B, you'll be like, okay, I made this mistake. How can I fix it in this game? Because you're going to be in a match where you're going to make a mistake. And rather than making it wreck your game, you're going to think, okay, I made a mistake. Hopefully my opponent doesn't capitalize on it. But if he does or she does, what lines do I take? How do I come back from this? And that will make you so much of a better player.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And even cards you already know, make sure you pay attention to all of the steps, all of their triggers. I can't tell you how many Diablo triggers I counted people missing at set championships in every single round. Even the semifinals that my wife played in to win the match, playing against Bucky, and I watched that person miss Diablo. Actually, maybe that person didn't miss Diablo triggers. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I have watched a lot of people miss Diablo triggers, and sometimes they'll ask you, "Hey, can I grab? Oh, I missed that earlier. Can I still draw for that?" The right answer is to say no, is to let them know that that's how it is. It's a May. You missed the trigger. Sometimes you'll feel inclined to be nice to them. They're your friend or something. It is a tournament. That's why you practice that way. You learn from your mistakes and you move on. And ultimately, those Bucky players don't need any more cards in their hand. All right, they discarded all of yours. They have everything that is coming to them. Okay, it's fine.
I'll just say, if you're playing Bucky and you forget that Diablo trigger, that's on you. I'm sorry. You yeah, exactly. I'm doing a little dance in my head. Because those, they're May triggers for a reason. So, it's up to you. If you want to be what I will say is this: it does not make you a bad sport to say no.
Absolutely.
It makes you correct.
Yep.
Right.
And as long as you're polite about it and
Yep.
you're not a jerk about it, like there's nothing wrong with saying no, I'm sorry, you can't do that and stuff. And if your opponent wants to get upset about it, that is not your problem. That is their problem.
Vince's problem.
And yeah, you do not need to worry about. Yeah, that's the tournament. That's the judge and
That's the
tournament
judge's
organizer's problem.
Yeah.
But it's not your problem. So don't like. I just want to put a fine capital point on exactly what Andy said, which is do not feel pressured to say no or call a judge. You also don't have to be the person to say no. You could call a judge and be like, hey, he asked me to do this. I don't, it's like, that's what judges are there for. That's a great example of calling a judge over to ask about a rules clarification and, game state question. So you don't even have to be the bad guy. Make the judge the bad guy.
Absolutely.
We're having a great discussion here, and I want to keep it going for a little bit longer. I know this segment has gone a little bit longer than normal, but I do want to talk about this spicy deck that Zach Bivens brought to Fort Worth. Kind of threw a lot of people for a loop, but it's this Amber Emerald. So, kind of an interesting twist on the discard package. Does not run Bucky. So not a Bucky deck. But it runs a bunch of cards that allow you to A, refill your hand, and B, force your opponent to discard their hand. So what do you guys think about this?
When I looked at it this weekend, or I guess Monday when it aired, I don't remember when I watched it, but it was very similar to the lemon lime that I run right now. And for every lemon lime that I've seen in the last several weeks, they don't run Bucky. It's always been the Prince John that's getting you the draws, or I think the Muses give you a draw too. Whenever you play the song, that's a return. But yeah, I was happy to see it get as high as it did. I don't know if he do top 64 or top 32 with it.
I think he
definitely
lost
in the top.
Yeah. He was in top 64. Yeah. I want to say he either lost in top 64 or top 32. I'm not 100% sure exactly.
Yeah, and it was against a Bucky deck. It was Lemon Lime versus Emerald Steel, and it went to 3 games, and it was just what was really interesting to me was watching his last mulligan, I think, where he had already played 2 games with his opponent, and he thought very deeply about how to mulligan this hand. I don't remember the line that he had, but like he set 4 cards down, 3 cards to the side. Then he picked up one of the 4 and he switched. And he was thinking, in my head, he was thinking so far in advance as to how to play this deck and what he's hoping to draw from it. And of course, I don't know what was in his head. I haven't played this deck enough. I haven't played this specific deck enough. But just watching him process this last game, hoping to get the win on the play or the draw, wherever he was. I'm guessing he was on the play since it was game 3. I don't remember. Just speculating here. But it was really interesting to me watching him process the mulligan part and thinking about, this is going to happen and this is going to happen and what's my best line to victory here. And I don't know if it's adding a whole lot to this conversation, but I noticed that, and it was something that I feel like that I need to pay more attention to at the start of the game when I have that kind of information. What do I need to do with the cards that I have, or what am I hoping to draw with these? And yeah, I've gone on too long about this. What do you think about it, Andy?
No, I think his deck is kind of spicy. The list version of his list I see here does not have Bucky in it at all.
Right. Yeah, they don't run Bucky.
Sir Hiss is interesting. I mean, it's as fast as it can go. And when you try and fight back, it Kita and then Under the Sea and does that kind of stuff. It uses Bare Necessities, Sudden Chill. Bruno, 4 Brunos is quite interesting. the Ursula 2-drop Ursula. It uses all of these to sort of just do the same kind of thing that green has been doing for a little while here with the Prince John, like you said. But it adds in that Kita package, some of the bare necessities to go with the Ursula to get the double rip from their hand. It is
Mhm.
very spicy and interesting. I actually saw one of these decks at set championships that I came in second at this past weekend. Um, we ended up in the finals against each other, and we settled outside of the game because they needed a mat, and I didn't. Um, but we played a best of three just for fun because we had the time. I was waiting for my wife to finish her match for the card, and they had not this exact list, but a similar one that was equally as degenerate and discarding. They actually had Bucky in it, which I think made it even worse. And um, but I do think Lemon Lime has some potential going forward, whether it be with this card, with the discard package, or just going back to its roots with that hyper aggro, where it
Yeah.
just lures and you got to do something about it, or else,
So what do you think? You think this is a I think this is a spicy deck, and it was looked like fun to play. Maybe not as fun to play against, because discard is never fun to play against, in my opinion. But it did look like it was a lot more fun to play than the traditional Emerald Steel discard. But do you think this is a S tier deck?
Oh,
No,
A tier, B tier?
Zach built it though, so maybe. But
no,
no,
yeah, I think
go
this
ahead,
is
Andy.
I think this is a deck that you could win with if you are Zach Bivens good at Lorcana, perhaps. I think it is certainly a deck that deserves exploration. I just can't recommend that the average person pick it up and try and you know take this to your set championships this weekend and see how it goes. I don't know that it'll go great for you.
So this isn't one you would net deck.
No, I would not net deck this. I would not net deck this. I mean, if you're looking to have fun, if you've already won a set championship, you've already gotten a card or a playmat, and you're just looking to have fun. That is what my buddy did, and to be fair, they got first place with it, right? So it is net deckable, if you will. It is certainly playable, but I don't know that it's. I don't know that it's the easiest deck to pick up. I don't like Brad said, he thought for quite a long time on that mulligan. If you're playing, green steel, you just is Bucky no 7,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's probably a little harder to play, and it also does come with that sort of coin flippy nature of aggro, where if they have the tools to stop you in that early game, then you just get shut down in the mid and late game.
Right. Because yeah, this game, the longer the game goes with a deck like this, the worse off you are going to be. Like
100%.
you want to win quick, you want to pull the cards out of their hand with bare necessities, pulling a song out. You want to, use sudden chill. You want to use that Ursula. You want to use that You Have Forgotten Me. I think the one thing I find really interesting here in this deck in particular, one thing I'll just as a side, because I know Brad, being the person who wants to make sure everybody understands terms that we use, just explain net decking for just 1 second, which is that it is when you see a deck online and you basically copy that deck and then play it. Which people have contentious opinions on that. I think it's fine. It's like, if not everybody's going to be an expert at deck building. Like, you should definitely be creative and think about it. But like, people have a busy lives, and like, you just want to find a deck that you think is easily playable, and you take it to a tournament.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say in this particular deck is that the only non-singable action here is You Have Forgotten Me, which means that the likely target hits for Ariel, I think, are actually pretty high. So every time you play her and you draw those 4 cards, the likelihood that I think you're gonna get a song, at least hit on one of those songs, is pretty high. So I think that's actually a pretty interesting spice
close
to
to
this deck.
It's close to
And
field goal numbers, yeah.
yeah, and allows basically her to sing it too. She can sing every song in this deck.
Yep. Except the
So,
Under the Sea.
well, with the exception of the
Yeah.
sea, yeah.
But you share
Yeah.
the singing duties on that one.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so with that, I think we'll talk a little bit about like what are you guys thinking this weekend for the last set championship?
I'm wishing you guys the best of luck because I will not be in any of them.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, Brad.
No, it's okay. It's not my time. Maybe next set we'll have better luck. I know you guys got some spicy ones coming up. How you feel about it?
Yeah, I've got the one at one of the stores we play at where Vince volunteers at, although he will be playing.
Fortuna.
Yeah, Fortuna Games in St. Louis. That one will be a lot of fun. I'll see all my friends there. It'll be great. You gonna stop by at least, Brad, and say hi, or follow us on Melee?
Is it at 11? I will definitely follow on Melee
It's
because
all
I'm
day,
always doing
so
that.
you can stop by anytime.
Yeah, I will. I'll take a look at that because I do have a wedding party to go to that afternoon. But yeah, it's possible either before or during. I'll try to drop in on the way back.
But yeah, I'm really excited for it. We had a good turnout last time. I'm expecting probably an even better turnout. Have we maxed out on that?
No, we haven't maxed out yet, but there's looking about 25 folks. I think I heard today or so. So
that's more than I thought.
So
was
more
the
than
max.
last time.
Yeah, that's more than I thought was the max. Honestly, I thought we would cap out at like 24 or something. That venue is like it's like one of those.
Yeah, all I care about is I just want 5 rounds. I don't want to go to 6 rounds.
Yeah, I like 6 rounds. The more rounds, the better. That's been one of my complaints for the DLC events. Is I think they should go more Swiss rounds, smaller top cut.
I know. Well, we'll talk. We'll have plenty of time to talk about those contentious topics like that and whether people love this 2-game format or 3-game format. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to stick with my good old Ruby Amethyst, my dear friend.
You should.
What's
or if
number
I'm
one
try
rule? Number one
something
rule.
else. It has not served me well right now. It's not.
Play what you're comfortable with.
Me.
Yep.
Got to get some practice.
Says the person. Says the guy who changes his deck at every freaking set championship.
I'm bringing the Bivens lemon lime.
I was gonna suggest that you should.
I would not be surprised if you did. To be honest with you, that would not surprise me in one bit.
I basically have it built. I don't know what I have in there before instead of the muses, but if you want to just borrow it, you can.
But anything else you guys want to talk about with set championships coming up? The last one.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing. It doing now 5 out of the 6 possible set champions. I guess actually 6 technically because I tried to squeeze one in and do a double header. Went and hung out with the mayor, and unfortunately we had some melee issues, so I barely got 2 rounds in before I had to leave instead of the 5.
Dipped out too early, actually.
He dipped out at 3-0.
Yeah, 2-0. I was 2-0.
Oh,
but yeah,
2-0?
I
Oh,
had to
okay.
dip out at 2-0. I was hoping to get like 3 or 4 rounds in, and have a clear picture of top cut or not. But had to run to another event. Ended up getting second there, so it worked out. But one thing, you have to. I've learned from this is you have to take the matches in stride. Each event, you have to not be too hard on yourself. There's a thing they call variance, which is essentially the random aspect of the card game. I think there's even laws in some states about prizing for card games because it's considered in some form gambling because it is a game of quote luck as opposed to a game of skill, depending on which bureaucratic body you ask about it, I guess. But ultimately, there is truth to that. Part of
we aren't lawyers, though, just to be clear. So
yes, be careful where you host your
I am the mayor
tournament games.
Yeah,
But yeah, there is, there is an aspect of luck to it that you sit down, you shuffle your cards, and even if you make absolutely the best possible decisions you possibly could have, your deck could be in the wrong order. That's just
Mhm.
how it is. And sometimes the outs that you're playing towards just aren't there. And all you can do is continue to try and make the best possible decisions that you can and move forward, go to the next event, have fun, root for your friends, go get some food, go home and sleep it off and be ready for the next event. Um, you-
Or cry
yeah,
and
crying is
think about
healthy
it,
too.
all your decisions that you made that were wrong, and self-flagellate yourself at home.
Crying is
So
healthy.
I disagree with Andy. You should brew after every loss that you have. you know just really think about all the mistakes that you've made, because they were all your fault.
There
No, I agree with Andy. I agree. You should. You're supposed to have fun, right?
Yeah, there is definitely one secret tech that my wife and I have figured out, and that is walk to the bar and take a shot before top cut. It improves your chances quite drastically. Just saying. You tie that last round, you're making it to top cut, head over to the bar, grab yourself a drink,
Or
or if you don't
whatever
drink,
vice that you have, whatever vice.
high C, maybe a Capri Sun,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
your drink of choice is to help calm you down. But ultimately, uh, don't be
Andy's
hard
over
on
here
yourself.
trying to make sure that we never ever get hired by Ravensburger to do anything. uh, no, I agree with you.
Whatever they
Anything
serve at
else?
the Snuggly Duckling, all right? Go there and have one of their libations. We'll leave
Well played, sir. Well played. But yeah, I agree. Um, Brad, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not really. No, I'm not
All
playing any
right.
of this
Well, I will
bullshit.
say this. Just good luck for folks out there. Just listen to everything that we've talked about in the past few weeks on these set championships. And there are other great creators out there that are giving great advice too. So plenty of advice out there to, watch, read, or listen to. And I encourage you to do it. And just, remember, just have fun. With that, we're getting on to our favorite segment, Villain of the Week. And this week is not going to sing this time. I know you want the clip for the promos. I'm not going to do
Gotta
it,
do it. You
but it's
gotta do it.
a whole new world. Okay, fine, I'll do it. A whole new world, a new
Yay!
fantastic point of view. No, I can't wait till more lyrics come out for this song. I'm just gonna say, like, I'm pumped. But yeah, so a whole new world. It's a steel, super rare action song. 5 cost uninkable. Each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. So, my friends, why is this our villain of the week?
Why not? Right? Who doesn't want 7 new cards? One thing you'll notice it doesn't say is that you have to have any cards really to discard. So when a whole new world is the last card in your hand, you get 7, and your opponent, well, they also get 7, but they lose everything they had in their hand, which can be quite the swing, as we've talked about with Steel Song, unless you have that new Magica, of course,
Yep.
that we were talking about, that denies it. But the swing, I think other TCGs called it a wheel, but that swing to be able to get an entire new hand, especially when you sing this, which I think is what really, really makes it the villain, is that you sing this with a character and now you have all of your ink available for your brand new hand of cards, which you can then play, and your opponent then has to answer, and now you are in the driver's seat against whoever your opponent is.
Yeah, I agree. As somebody who's been playing Blue Steel this entire set, it's a hand maker and a hand ruiner for the opponent. you ramp up to the 5, you get somebody out there that can sing it, and you have more ink than you need at turn 5 already. So starting off that fresh new hand with all that ink and just being in the driver's seat just takes such big control of the game, and takes away everything that they were planning to do with their upcoming turns and everything. And it's been a contentious card since the beginning of the game, just because it's so powerful and what it could do and how it can be disruptive. But it also does come at the cost of, if you sing it too early, or if you have to use all of your ink to play it, then it's possible that you're sending 7 new cards into the opponent, and they're going to take over because you've used all your ink. But just this past Monday night at our local game store, there's a child there who absolutely hates that card, and she made it well known. Neither one of you attended this week, but it was kind of cute to be at another table listening to her. I hate that card, and I'm like, you're gonna have to listen to the podcast this week, or maybe not, but we're gonna be talking about how triggering it can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I have a love-hate relationship with this card, because I will say, I don't hate, because it's one of those cards I think you can play around when you
Mhm.
know is coming. So it's not as damaging to you. But there are times where it gets played a little too early for you, and you're like, "Oh no, I had the perfect mulligan, and now you just ruined it." So I think it kind of is a little bit meta dependent. I will say I don't see as many folks rushing to play it early in the game, just because there are other utility players out to help handle it. Whether you're looking at Amber Steel, you got Bare Necessities that can yank a song out of your hand. You've got, the typical Emerald Steel doesn't really run it. But you've got, the Jafar Wheel might, but that's kind of doing its own weird, cheating lore out. And so, the other one is Sapphire Steel, but you're not wanting to run. You want to ramp and then use that to refill your hand and play. So, you can kind of know it's like, okay, you're again Ruby Amethyst player, and that's the where I'm gonna set the example from is you can play out those 5 turns and know, okay, I know I got a ticking time clock. Once he starts to dump his hand out, that song's coming, so I'm gonna ink everything I can and try to put things away, in ink. In fact, I was actually playing Jesus, who we talked about his Steel Song deck last week. Fantastic player. He's running this Steel Amethyst deck today at League, and so I was testing out Ruby Sapphire for the first time, and I had doing all the ink and stuff, and I knew he had the Robin Hood, 5-drop Robin Hood to onboard, and I knew that song was coming, but I was like, maybe I'll just hold on to this Be Prepared in my hand. So I got rid of everything I had in hand except for this Be Prepared, and I was like, I just questioned whether or not I should have quilled it, and took the risk, and I made the wrong bet, because the next time, sing, whole new world, whole new hand, and he's got the whole link, just like you said. And just again, it really, that is a perfect example of being able to continue to advance the board state. One thing I will say to everybody listening there is that wheel comes from Magic. So there was a card, I think it was called Wheel of Fortune, that did something very, very similar to this. I'm not a Magic player, so if I got that wrong, you can totally comment and yell at me. That's totally fine. Any engagement is great engagement, and so but I'm all on board with, we should now call this World.
Yeah,
I will world you, not wheel you, world you. So that's my thing. So as we always do these weeks, is this card bannable, not bannable? And 2, how would you errata it?
Make it not a song.
I wouldn't.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I wouldn't. You're right. I think ultimately it is fine. The more villains we do, the less ban slash errata-able they will be, because they just you know will ultimately be a less strong card than the week before, presumably. But
We don't know that. We don't know that. There's plenty of sets to come out, Andy.
you're right. It will have its ups and downs, but ultimately, not every card is bannable or erratable. I think if you had to, or if you wanted to make it less powerful, something like making it not singable.
Yeah.
Although I think ultimately that would, I think a whole new world would just fall over, right? It would
Yeah.
teeter over, and no one would play it. Then it would be a lot harder to play for sure. Having to spend 5 ink to recycle your hand, because a lot of other decks don't care really. Ruby Amethyst does, because they're drawing tons of cards. They have to commit things to the board and try not to draw too much before they lose that card. They'll get decked out, like you said. Um, but decks like Red Blue, they don't care really. They'll take a whole new hand of cards that are probably higher quality than your cards. So
Yeah.
it I think that would just sort of drop it out of play, would be to make it not singable. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's I don't think I would do anything with it if like Andy said, if I would have to. One of the contention points has always been in every discussion about this annoying card to some people is make it where you have to spend your ink for it, because it's so powerful to sing this song and then have all your ink to just ramp up even more. Blue Steel, you ramp into all your 1-drop items. You're getting those on board to prepare for Tammy, and then you're getting more cards with it. So you're just so far ahead at that point that it's almost it's almost game at that moment, depending on how they answer you. One thing you both touched on is that it's very clear when you're playing Blue Steel. Like, everybody that I play always assumes when I'm down to 1 or 2 cards that one of them's a whole new world. So you can always prepare for it, like you did with Be Prepared and Jesus tonight when you were playing. So you're always expecting it. That's why I switched a couple weeks ago to a non-new whole world deck after watching a video on YouTube. One of the top 16ers in Chicago played Blue Steel without whole new world. It was all characters, I think maybe 1 jump and stuff. And Andy, was expecting whole new world for the whole first game that we played each other on league night, and I was like, nope, I don't have it. But regarding the change, I don't see anything other than what Andy already said. I think it's perfectly fine, and it only fits in a few decks anyway, right? So
Yeah, I think that's right. I think so let me be the villain here, right? And say that my understanding is that the cards like this are generally quickly banned in other TCGs.
really,
And so that's one argument for it. The second argument for it being banned is that it essentially can be played for free because you can sing it.
yes, yeah,
And so it has a lot of value there. I think as sets have gone on, we have seen it be a less impactful card. I think people really hated this card early in the game when we had the first chapter or even just Floodborn. I think now we're not seeing it as prevalent. But I think if I were to errata this card, I think it's still an absolute kind of must play in the game. But I actually think it probably is too cheap. It should probably be like an uninkable 7 cost. And my reasoning for that is we have a lot of different cards that kind of have like different values of getting like cards in hand, and some of them just seem like they don't make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things and stuff. So you think about it, you can sing Friends on the Other Side and you get 2 cards. So 3 cost inkable card, and you get 2 cards. But here is basically draw 7 cards for 5, and it's uninkable. Now, granted, there's a penalty in the discard phase, right? But there's like some value in the fact that they're both singable, and one has if you have no cards in hand and you're playing it, and that's how you want to play it on the play for you, you want to get all that value out so you can sing it for free. You're probably going to throw away one card maybe or two cards. And like that's insane value even at that point. You're getting rid of two cards that are less ideal probably for you, and you're drawing up to 7, so you're netting 5 additional cards for a cost of 5, and you've probably sung it. Like that's a lot of value you're getting out of this card. And so I think the argument I would say is like put this in a slot like Be Prepared, where Be Prepared doesn't get sung because very few characters can sing it.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
and it puts it into that range. What's
I
up?
was gonna say maybe make it sing together, even 7 costs sing together, 8 costs or something like that, and then you got your characters. You have to commit to singing it. I don't know.
That just makes it easier to
It's-
sing, honestly.
Yeah, it
Sing
just makes it
together
easy.
easier
Yeah.
to sing.
So
But also in your cost to card ratio, you've got the 10 costs sing together second star on the right for 5 cards. So half the price, 2 extra cards.
Yeah.
I would also you talked about earlier about other lyrics to this song, maybe a card called A Whole New Point of View, and that one is each player discards their hand and draws as many cards as they discarded. So it would be like A Whole New World, but if you play it while you have no cards in your hand, you only get the one back, and if the other person has 10 cards in their hand, they get 10 more, So that might ultimately be not a very playable card, but
Yeah.
I would love to see some more, maybe another variation of this, where you can maybe one where they have variable costs. I know they do this in other trading card games where we're sitting here debating whether it should be 5 costs, 7 costs, sing together, 10 costs. Maybe it's X cost, right? However many you play, that's how many you draw. Discard your whole hand and draw X amount. Although that would be kind of devious for people to play for like none, and then everyone discards their hand and gets 0 cards back. And so insta top deck mode, I'm sure there would be some degenerate players out there doing that, and I would hate that meta just like I hate Bucky. Okay, don't listen to us, Ravensburger. Do not. No, don't do it. Bad idea.
No, actually
Just
do
kidding.
it and give us this card to reveal.
I won't reveal
and
it.
Andy will have to
I'll
reveal it.
steal the card and I'll run away like Carmen Sandiego. You'll never find me. Stole the card.
if we don't
reveal.
if we don't reveal it, can they release it?
Exactly.
Well,
Be great.
that's it for this a week in or villain of the week. Man, see, not like it's contagious, Brad. You're just giving me the. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, thank you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We're also on YouTube, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and hit that bell icon to be notified of our next episode. Until next week, stay safe, fellow villains. Be wary of wannabe heroes who want to disrupt your villainous plans. And as always, remember the rules of villainy.